Alright, here we go. We'll start this tour here. Go along the route. Alright, so there's no tour guide. It's just app here.
Hello, and welcome to the University of Arizona's Biosphere 2. My name is John Adams, and I'm going to be one of your tour guides today. What we're going to be sharing with you is the amazing history of Biosphere 2, the striking architecture, and the cutting-edge research that's happening here. Bioshere 2 is an amazing facility, and there is so much to see. Now, when you're visiting and touring Bioshere 2, we encourage everybody to stay well hydrated. There are bottle filling stations throughout the facility, but by chance, if you've forgotten yours, you can purchase one in our gift shop. Also, the environments and the weather can vary. So when you come, we recommend wearing layered clothing because the tour is about 50-50. Half of it's inside and half of it's outside. Remember that everything inside Biosphere 2 is going to be tropical or subtropical in nature. That means it's going to be hot and humid. So layered clothing is ideal for you to be the most comfortable. Your visit is critical to the continued operation here at Biosphere 2 because without your support, we cannot continue to do the research and education initiatives that we have. Thank you very much for visiting today. We are nestled here at the base of the Santa Catalina Mountains and on the edge of the Sonoran Desert. The property has been inhabited for thousands of years, initially by indigenous people. And then in the 1920s, it was homesteaded by Dr. Lackner, a dentist in Tucson who ran a small cattle ranch and hunting lodge. Then, in 1957, Lady Margaret of Suffolk purchased the property. She built a Spanish-style home on the eastern end, complete with servant quarters and a pool. And then she sold the property to the Motorola Corporation, who continued to build out the infrastructure. That included a 27-room hotel, a restaurant, as well as a 120-seat auditorium for executive training sessions and also for the facility to act as a retreat. After that, by virtue of a land swap, the University of Arizona Foundation acquired the property in the late 70s. They continued to operate the facility as an executive training center and retreat. And in 1984, they sold the property to Space Biosphere Ventures, who continued to build out the infrastructure and built Biosphere 2.
So these are the hotel quarters that it was talking about in that virtual tour. So I'm not going to show the video of the guy talking because it's just him talking, but I'll just show you what it looks like while he's talking. So those are all hotels and stuff too. I think that's for the university students to stay though. Ooh, look at that. There's some petrified wood.
In 1984, Space Biosphere Ventures purchased this property and they started to build it out. Over here you can see the test module, which was used as a prototype prior to building Biosphere 2. Next to that are the greenhouses that they used to quarantine plants and animals prior to putting them inside the facility. And then the analytical lab, which is where they used stored instrumentation and took water and soil samples. And then directly behind me here in the arch building is the former mission control. This is where people monitored everything happening inside when the Biospherians lived in Biosphere 2.
Damn, that's crazy. They were just monitoring those people living in there. And that was the prototype before they made the big boy. Check out this cactus really quick before I head back to the tour part. I was supposed to go right there, but I wanted to see this cactus really quick. Damn, look at ocean, rainforest, the desert.
When they broke ground for Biosphere 2, what's remarkable is it only took them 4 years to build this over 3-acre facility, complete with a tropical rainforest, an ocean, a savanna, a marsh, a desert, an agricultural area, and a living quarters. Just like our houses, they had complete kitchen, dining area, apartments, bathrooms, workout facilities. In doing so, they created an environment that they hoped they would be able to live inside, and they successfully did for 2 years. Now, they faced some challenges, as one might expect. Just like anybody who's confined in spaces, they face social and psychological challenges. The farm area wasn't as productive as they hoped and did not give them adequate calories, although they were okay from a nutritional standpoint. And one of the big challenges they faced is that the very rich soils they put in the rainforest and in the former farm area supported a very diverse and abundant microbial communities. Those microbes are just like you and I. They take in oxygen, they give off CO2. Well, it was that respiration that outpaced plant photosynthesis. Remember, photosynthesis takes in CO2, water, splits it, and gives off oxygen, which we use to breathe. Well, that balance wasn't quite right inside Biosphere 2, and it dropped down to nearly 14.2%. Outside is 21%, inside Biosphere 2 at about the day 500 of this 2-year mission. They ended up, because they felt that it was needed for the safety of the biospherians, adding oxygen into the system. In doing so, though, one of the big mistakes, in my opinion, was they were not forthcoming with this. And in fact, they did not tell the public that they had to do so. And this was a project that was so widely and highly publicized. They had to retract some statements. And we all know what happens when you do those types of things. It's very difficult to recovery. And as a result, they lost tremendous amounts of credibility, not only with the scientific community, but with the media and the public. But they did successfully complete the 2-year mission. They had a short intermission, and then another group, this time of 7 versus 8, were sealed inside Biosphere 2, but only for about 6 months. It was at this time that the original ownership group decided that they were going to transition the facility away from a human habitation experiment and more towards an earth and environmental science experiment with the help of Columbia University. So they began a partnership with Columbia University. Columbia University officially took over management in January of 1996 and began to build out and repurpose Biosphere 2 so it could be used more formally as an earth and environmental science laboratory. About 7 years into Columbia University's tenure, there was a decision made because of an administration change at Columbia University that they were no longer going to continue management of this remarkable facility.
In 2007, the University of Arizona assumed management of Biosphere 2 and eventual ownership in 2011. The reason that the University of Arizona was interested in taking over this facility is because there are research questions that we can answer here that we can't answer anywhere else. Inside Biosphere 2, we have a fully established tropical rainforest, the world's largest experimental ocean, and a massive earth science research project called LEO, the Landscape Evolution Observatory. As you tour today, you will learn more about the research going on in each of those areas. Here is the human habitat. This is where the biospherians had their apartments, their kitchen, and some of their laboratories. At the very top here is the library. This provided them a 360-degree view of the horizon. The biospherians rarely use the library due to the long spiral staircase that it took to get up to the top. Over here is the original airlock door. This is where the biospherians entered and exited the facility.
Example of an experiment here at Biosphere 2 where we have integrated the harvesting of electricity and energy with the growing of agricultural crops. Now this layout and system is mutually beneficial for both. And what I mean by that is that the plants, they transpire, they give off water. That water goes up and hits the underside of the panels, actually cools the panels. Keeping them cooler means that they're more efficient. Now, the shading overhead is beneficial for the crops. It extends their growing season and also protects them from the elements, which means the crops have a more favorable growing situation throughout the entire year. Here at Bioshere 2, we are very concerned with the ideas of food, energy, water, and health. Behind me is a prime example of a new technology that is designed to improve the efficiency of solar collection.
Welcome to the Upper Human Habitat. For this part of your experience, we invite you to view some historical productions shot in the early 90s that give you an inside look of what it was like to be a biospherian.
Am I able to look in the kitchen?
Yeah. You don't want to take
Cool.
it? Come in.
Thank you. Ooh,
State of the
wow.
art for 1990.
Yeah. So where are you from?
I'm visiting from Washington.
Biosphere 1 is, of course, the Earth, and this is Biosphere 2, and this was an experiment on, isolating, not isolating people, but doing an experiment of where they're encapsulated in this building.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they spent 2 years in here.
And that was the first group, right? It was for 2 years?
Yeah.
The first group? Okay. Is there a documentary, do you know about it or anything?
Beg your pardon?
A documentary that they made or anything?
Yes.
Oh, there
part
is,
of it
okay.
there. And then it's on the, as you go through the panels, we'll tell you how, this is how the kitchen was and what they did in the kitchen. They had animals in here, so they had goats and, what else, chickens, and then some fish in the rice paddies.
Are they still involved with the college or?
Yeah, this
Oh.
is all the University of Arizona now research. And there's the coral there, and they have coral in the ocean now, and they're doing the research on those.
Well, that's amazing. That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so.
That's kind of crazy to think that they lived here, these people. So even though this is the museum, this is where they lived. Like, they still got all their shit in there. And then when you go into the bathroom, there's a shower right there. Damn.
There are 10 apartments in the human habitat. Each Biospherian had his or her own two-story apartment. The living room was downstairs and the bedroom was upstairs. Each crew member decorated their apartment to their own personal taste. Some became libraries, while others, like the one you see through the window, became an artist's studio. Personal privacy was very important to the Biospherians. Their apartments became their castles. Contact by phone and computer to family and friends in the outside world made the isolation a little easier to endure.
This is the Landscape Evolution Observatory, and you're looking at the world's largest laboratory earth science experiment. What this experiment does is it tries to answer important questions like, when it rains in the mountains, how much of that drinking water actually makes it to our aquifers and our supplies for us to use? And you would think that's common knowledge, but it's actually surprisingly not well known. Behind me, you'll see one of 3 large hill slope landscapes. And these landscapes were designed to be able to study the underground movement of water extremely well. The way we do that is that we've submerged thousands of sensors that can measure water, they can measure gas and other properties of the soil subsurface. We've buried those sensors into the ground, built our landscape around those sensors, and now we can use a sprinkler system to rain across our landscape and track and measure where that water goes and how it moves under the surface of the landscape. As you look out over these landscapes, what you'll see is a black volcanic material. This is called basalt, and it's actually common across many of our landscapes on Earth. You can also find basalt on other planets like Mars. On top of that dark material, you're going to see some signs of life. Most prominently is these large mats of moss. And that moss is an early stage successional species of the landscape. It's found a home, and what it's doing is pulling nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fixing it into the basalt soil. That soil gets enriched and actually becomes more fertile and more supportive of all life, including plants. The next successional stage of this experiment involves adding plants. And we'll be adding grasses, alfalfa, and perhaps even trees like mesquite to investigate how plant roots and plants as a whole start to alter the hydrology of the landscape.
Operated by the University of Arizona, Biosphere 2 is a sophisticated model of our planet Earth. Can you imagine a laboratory that holds a rainforest and an ocean? That is what Biosphere 2 does. It contains biomes that simulate Earth systems on a massive scale, providing a home for the huge questions asked by chemists, biologists, ecologists, and other researchers who work here to understand our planet. Biosphere 2 is a living laboratory where scientists examine interactions in a controlled environment. You can't put the entire Amazon rainforest under glass and control it, but the rainforest in Biosphere 2 is contained, so you can manipulate the water and temperature conditions to conduct experiments on the entire ecosystem.
Here in the rainforest, we do a lot of research looking at how do tropical forests respond to climate change. And we do that in response to increasing in carbon dioxide, because that happens with climate change, increasing temperature, and increasing drought. This tower behind me has sensors for temperature and humidity and for light, so that we actually can understand those conditions as they change. With that, we know the growing conditions every 15 minutes for these plants at the locations that are at, so in great detail. Now that's above ground. We also need to know that below ground, especially when we do droughts. Where do the trees get their water from, and what are the conditions? And so we can look all the way down to the bottom to actually measure where the water comes from. That also gives us the possibility to actually put tracers in the water and then see which trees take up the water, either at the top, at the bottom. So those kind of questions we hope to answer in the near future.
There are 5 very different biomes under glass at Biosphere 2, including the tropical rainforest. The ocean biome contains 700,000 gallons of salt water. With a new wave blower, pump, and heat exchanger, the ocean can accurately simulate the stresses and conditions found in natural marine systems. Research is enhanced by the addition of our Ocean Raceway, a nursery for corals. The mangrove biome is composed of 2 major types of wetlands, a grassy marsh and a swamp filled with mangrove trees. The desert biome simulates an arid scrub ecosystem in a coastal climate, sometimes called a fog desert. The savanna biome, with a stream and waterfall, is a transition zone between the desert and the rainforest and is planted with many grasses and edible species of trees. Beneath these biomes is what's called the technosphere, more than 3 acres of electrical, plumbing, and mechanical systems that regulate the temperature, airflow, and humidity levels. The Energy Center complex is the hub for all control, electrical, and mechanical systems necessary to sustain Biosphere 2. Here at the Landscape Evolution Observatory, or LEO, researchers are studying a landscape in its first phase of evolution. LEO is an experiment to study the interacting systems of air, water, soil, plants, and microbes. It consists of 3 enormous steel structures filled with 1 million pounds of crushed basalt rock from a volcanic crater in northern Arizona. The forming soil in each structure is filled with almost 2,000 sensors, so that scientists can measure the effects of their experiments on water, carbon, energy, and other cycles. By controlling different elements of this complex system, they hope to find answers to many real-world questions, including the effects landscapes have on the amount and quality of water runoff.
This past winter, we implemented a 45-day rain experiment on all 3 of our hill slopes. That water percolates through the soil and interacts with the thousands of sensors we have embedded at different depths.
Those sensors allow researchers to create 3D models of their landscapes, which yield unparalleled insight into the water cycle and how it relates to hydrology and ecology on our hill slopes and mountains. As a massive experiment, LEO is helping us understand some of the most fundamental processes that sustain life on Earth.
The Bioshere 2 was built to recreate the major biomes here on Earth. And of course, with over 70% of the Earth's surface covered with ocean, it was critical that we have an ocean ecosystem. Our team, along with 50 partners from all over the world, are using this unique system to study resilience of coral reefs under future changing ocean conditions. The Bioshere 2 is truly a unique opportunity for this because we have both scale and control. The 700,000 gallons of this ocean ecosystem is dedicated to coral reef research. We have a deep 4-reef environment that's about 20 feet deep, which rises up to a reef crest. And then finally behind me, we have a shallow back reef lagoon next to the beach. The reef behind me here at the Bioshere 2 looks like what we expect reefs to look like in the future if we continue to do nothing. So we've been slowly introducing more and more of these herbivores to the system, including fish that graze, pick at that algae, to understand how we can tip that balance from a degraded coral reef ecosystem to a healthy coral reef ecosystem. Here in the Sonoran Desert, we have a really unique system that allows us to test innovative solutions for building resilient coral reefs in the future. These reefs provide important services and will continue to do so for generations to come.
Earth science has revealed that human beings are a significant agent of change on our ecosystems. We ourselves are changing the way that systems on Earth interact and evolve. Because of this, the human factor must play an important role in our scientific studies. Humans were part of the first experiments conducted at Biosphere 2. Between 1991 and 1994, there were 2 missions whose purpose was to study how to create a closed ecological system with the ability to support human life in outer space. 8 people were sealed inside Biosphere 2 for 2 years. One of their goals was to learn how to grow all of their own food in a way that was sustainable, using limited resources of land and water. To do this, they formed agricultural plots in the part of Biosphere 2 that LEO occupies today. Biosphere 2 is no longer a closed, sealed system.
Now, the 40-acre Biosphere 2 campus is being used as a model city to develop and test technologies for sustainable power sources and better resource management. Our big questions are not limited to Earth. Our original test module is now being converted into a high-fidelity analog for SAM. When complete, SAM will be a sealed, human-in-the-loop system that simulates an off-world habitat. With an airlock, hub, and crew quarters, academic and commercial research teams will experiment with fertile soil creation, renewable energy development, computer modeling, and crew procedures. The physical size of Biosphere 2 is matched by the ambition of its educational mission to show how science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are vital to our future, and to inspire new generations of groundbreaking scientists. A 5-year grant extension from the National Science Foundation makes possible on-site internships geared toward students of underrepresented communities. Through research projects and mentoring, interns gain experience that's essential for graduate studies and careers in science. Undergraduate and graduate students alike are served by our VIP program that offers ambitious, long-term, multidisciplinary projects led by faculty. The goal? To help prepare the next wave of researchers who will take on the major scientific questions of the future. Biosphere 2 also serves entrepreneurs and startups. The University of Arizona Center for Innovation at Bioshere 2 supports projects focused on renewable energy and sustainable technology. Entrepreneurs develop, test, and demonstrate their technology, creating businesses that will bring solutions to society while fueling the economy.
Biosphere 2, since day one, has been ahead of its time. It's built in a way that can be transformed, and it's built in a way that has gotten better every single year. The world has realized that Biosphere 2 is the place to do its research.
Biosphere 2, advancing science here and beyond.
Hello, welcome to the Orchard. This is the place that the Biospherians affectionately called the Sweet Shop. They didn't have processed or refined sugars during the sealed missions, so they used the produce, the fruits from this area and from the
there's
rainforest
figs.
to sweeten their meals. So what do we have in here today? So we've got figs, we've got guava, oranges, lemons, grapefruit, more guavas, some coffee, some limes, and some bananas. There used to be more tropical plants in here, but because it gets a little cold in here in the wintertime, they didn't make it. The only one that's similar to that today that's still around is right over there is a little tree called Suriname cherry. The Biospherians relied on primarily a plant-based diet. I say primarily because they also had pigs, chickens, and goats in here, so they did occasionally get eggs and milk, and less frequently they got meat. Their diet was nutrient-rich but calorie-poor, so they lost a lot of weight while they were in here. Often when they would harvest more than for just one meal, so they often had to store that produce away and kind of ration it out. That was especially the case with bananas. Occasionally with those bananas, they would make banana wine. It's really the only time they got alcohol. Coffee was another example of how they would ration things out. They would hold the coffee beans as they harvested them till everybody could have a cup of coffee, and that could last as much as 2 weeks between coffee cups. So the challenges that the Biospherians faced were similar to some of the challenges that we might face today as we go travel in outer space for the long space missions. What to eat and how to produce it.
There it is.
Biosphere 2 had very specific design criteria, but architecturally, it was designed to have a lasting impact on people's imagination. The space frame structure was developed by Pierce Structure out of California. In order to maintain structural integrity, Peter Pierce conceived the idea of the nodeless node, frame joints that are connected by overlapping airs held together with a bolt. Each frame node can withstand up to 5,000 pounds of force. In order to make the structure airtight, the window joints were sealed with a long-lasting flexible sealant made by Dow Corning. Even today, 35 years after construction, the sealant is still pliable. 6,500 windows, 20 miles of caulking, and 77,000 space frame struts make up the breadth and marvel of the Biosphere 2 structure. What you can't see is a 500-ton stainless steel liner. Imagine a bathtub that isolates Biosphere 2 from the desert environment. This liner, along with the windows and the space frame, come together in order to seal Biosphere 2. This is the lung, an extraordinary piece of engineering that was developed to protect the glass units of Biosphere 2 from exploding and imploding when it was a sealed environment. As the sun is heating the building, air inside the building is expanding. And if there hadn't been a release for that air, another place for volume control, air volume control, that building would have blown up. The air moves to that chamber in order to alleviate the pressure of the Biosphere 2 glass building.
All right, so this is the coastal fog desert. App will give you the details of why it carries that name, but if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Thank you.
Coastal fog deserts need to exist on a coastline, but that coastline will be created only at 23 degrees above or below the equator. That's specifically referencing the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Popular locations will be Madagascar, Chile, Peru, Costa Rica. This chamber, however, is Baja. As you would travel south towards Mexico on the Baja Peninsula, you will come to a desert looking like this. In the evening, when the sun sets in those locations, the temperature significantly drops, and the water system that the desert is on will express moisture, which will then become the fog, drift over to the desert, and sit, giving thus this lush that you see here. This desert is filled with topography, the valleys, the hills, and all of the wonderful landscaping that exists here. Presently, the desert is resting because by spring it will just burst with floral complements. Often, guests ask, why a desert? But anything green is going to produce oxygen and consume carbon dioxide. Between the two missions, it was decided to convert this desert into a Mediterranean hardwood forest, which would further produce more oxygen and potentially consume carbon dioxide.
Dang, so it's supposed to be plants from Mexico and Madagascar, and some from here too. Agave. Damn, imagine these were here in the 90s when this was made, in 1990 when all those people were here.
This is the thorn scrub area. This is an area that kind of serves as a transition zone between deserts and the more tropical regions that you'll find up above. Originally, when Bioshere 2 was built, this was an area that was summer active, so this area would produce oxygen during the summer, as opposed to the desert where you just for a moment ago that was winter active and would produce oxygen in the winter time. Plants in this area were brought in from places like Mexico and Madagascar. Some of them rather close to our southern border down here. But it's one of the nice areas in here where we get a nice full canopy that covers up everything. So nice, shady, cool area, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Damn, this is so crazy. Imagine living in here for 2 years. I don't know, I don't think I would get depressed. But it was the 90s, a lot of shit was going on, you know, with technology, computers, all that shit. So I'm sure they wanted to get the hell out. A lot of pop culture things are going on, you know. Damn, look at the freaking vines are all around the bars.